Hearing none, the member of Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My pleasure to speak in third on Bill 10, Fiscal Statutes Amendment Act 2016. You know, it's so interesting to hear one side talk about ideology and another side talk about all ideology, and they're both ideological. They both have fixed beliefs about how to manage a declining economy. One says austerity doesn't work. The other says austerity works. Well, why don't we ask a few experts, like the Nobel Prize winner in economics, Paul Krugman. He talks about the delusion of austerity and how much damage it does when an economy goes south, how much damage it does to children, to the vulnerable, to families, to health care, and in fact in 2009 to 13 he compares various countries in the OECD that approached a decline in economy with strict fiscal constraint and those that actually borrow and invest. And he shows in graphic form how they have debunked the whole notion of cyclical spending, and now most of the world has embraced counter-cyclical spending. You borrow at the time when the economy goes down because interest rates are low, people need support, infrastructure is needed, maintenance hasn't been maintained, low prices for labor, low prices for infrastructure building. You guys are way out of date in your reading. I don't think you've read any of The Economist because you continue to harp on the same notion that austerity at a time of suffering will somehow improve the economy and build a new economy. Well, clearly that has been shown repeatedly to be wrong. Counter-cyclical spending is the norm of the new economies of the world. With a plan to pay it back. That's the missing ingredient, a plan to pay it back. I agree with that. But stop pushing austerity.
Through the chair, please, honourable member.
I got a bit animated there, Mr. Speaker. I apologize. Debt is a serious liability. There's no question. Capital is an investment. Operating costs must be questioned. Capital investment is a good investment. I don't mind seeing debt around new infrastructure, maintenance of falling infrastructure. Excellent. We need that. But ongoing operating costs, we have to find another way. And we need to find that through a plan. It would be very helpful for all of us, I think, here to hear some options about what this government is thinking about beyond an alternate economy that we're trying to build. I think we need to talk about other sources of revenue, user fees, all kinds of new creative investments on roads and making sure that we are all paying our way, because truly we are passing this massive debt onto the future. Having said that, you put in an artificial debt cap, which was well below the rest of the country. For whatever reason, you now have to rescind it. I don't hold you too much at fault with that. You are trying to demonstrate to the world that you recognize the problem of debt. Well, clearly, with the rest of the country in the 30s and 40 percentiles for debt to GDP ratio, you're a long way from that, but obviously we would like to see you put some limit. I mean, not just lift a cap, but what is it you're actually going to try and target? It would give us all some confidence. I've talked about Paul Krugman and his counter-cyclical spending, Nobel Prize winner. He received that because of his excellent research around austerity and the damage it has done around the world. So spending during surplus aggravates labor costs, building costs, and in fact creates the boom-bust economy that we've been struggling with all these years. You guys, I'm talking about the ND government, have indeed inherited a massive infrastructure deficit. You've inherited a maintenance deficit. You've inherited an economic decline, unprecedented at least in the last 20 years. You have made a new commitment to addressing climate change, which is laudable, but that means necessarily challenging your budgets. And you've made a commitment to shift to a new economy. and made a serious commitment in terms of looking at ways to stimulate new energy and new businesses in general. And to your credit, I guess you embraced the notion that small business needs a break, that capital tax deductions or investment tax deductions are probably a good other way to invest in new business. So you're learning. I appreciate that. What I would like to see, and I think many people would like to see, if not another cap to replace this one, at least a plan to repay. And that's been missing. So having said those things, I have come around to actually moderate my opinion of this lifting of a debt cap, and I can live with this because of what you've inherited and because of the counter-cyclical spending that is not ideological, but is based on evidence from around the world that you spend during a decline in the economy, and you take care of people, and you invest in new infrastructure, especially with low interest rates. This is the time when we might get a real stimulus for a very broken economy at this time. So I will be supporting this bill, although initially I was planning to vote this down. I look at the history of this debt cap. You're the first ones that put a debt cap on. It's a third of what most of the rest of the country has for a debt to GDP ratio. The only province who's spending less than us in the next 4 years, according to the Fraser Institute, the only province spending a little less than us is Saskatchewan in terms of program expenses per GDP and general expenses per GDP. Let me say that most of the eastern provinces are up to 4 times higher in the debt to GDP. So it's not like we're way out of line with the rest of the country. No, we don't want big debt, but let's look at it relative to the country. Let's look at it in the context of an economy that has really gone south, and recognize that in 2018, the Fraser Institute predicted that only BC and Saskatchewan would have slightly less debt to GDP than Alberta would. We're still ahead of the rest of the country based on our projected budget for 2018, according to the Fraser Institute. So, I mean, let's get serious and get on with the business here. Thank you.
Any questions under 29.28 of the honourable member from